To start off the day, I want you all to imagine a warm, crackling fire with two comfy chairs side by side. I'll sit on one chair and be joined by one of our event sponsors, Josh Blair of Impro.AI, which is an impressive executive coaching organization. We will have a fireside chat about the future of developing talent. Our discussion will unpack what is involved in running programs now as compared to the way we ran them during the pre-pandemic normal, quote unquote. This will include highlights about how the Generation Y and Z approach to self-improvement and why that matters from an HR perspective. Josh Blair is a man who wears many different and impressive hats as a business leader. Not only is he the co-founder and CEO of Impro.AI, he is a partner at Esplanade Venture Capital and the chairman at TELUS International and a board director at Neighborly Pharmacies, Carebook Technologies, and the University of Victoria. Prior to 2020, Josh worked at TELUS for a quarter of a century, most recently as group president. He also spent 12 years as the company's chief learning financial officer and eventually the chief human resources officer. During this time, TELUS became the most prolific global winner of the Association for Talent Development's Best Award. As a matter of fact, there were 14 wins through to 2019 with Josh at the helm. And in 2005, Josh was named the Global Learning Leader of the Year. Welcome, Josh, to our virtual fireside chat.
Thank you, Brenda. It's great to be here, and obviously a tremendous day yesterday already. So looking forward to, kicking off based on that momentum.
So how are you feeling today about your talk?
Really good. It looks like it's excellent attendance. The numbers keep rolling in. So hopefully, the main goal today is to provide just a few thoughts, and hopefully everyone gets a couple tidbits that help you in your role. Being an HR practitioner for myself for many years, I know how difficult that role is, where you're trying to do everything you can to help the business succeed. But sometimes that's challenging when you're doing that from a position of support as opposed to a position of leading the business yourself. So hopefully we can provide some tools that will help you really help your business move forward in a meaningful way.
Awesome. Hey, Josh, we're gonna have a few little questions to ask you. I've been wondering, how real is the great resignation that everyone is talking about, and how worried should leaders and HR professionals be about this?
It's interesting, Brendan. I know it was touched on yesterday too. I think the best way to proceed is to assume it's very real. So there was a PwC study recently that said literally 65% of employees across North America are looking for a new job, which is a staggering number. If you think 2/3 of employees could turn over. And you talked about the opening keynote yesterday, focusing on and how we have to have a new relationship with our team members. It's interesting. I've had some leaders say to me, I'm just not seeing it yet. I'm not seeing this great resignation. Maybe it's overhyped. I think that's a false assumption, because it's not like everyone's going to change jobs on day one coming out of the pandemic. It's going to happen over several months. And so I don't think we can assume that, this isn't as big an issue as it is. I think we have to assume it's a big issue. So I do believe we have to worry about it. But the flip side of that is, if you take all the tools that are being presented yesterday and today, you can also see this as an opportunity as opposed to something to stress about and worry about. And what I mean by that is, if you can be better than other employers, better than HR teams at retaining your best talent, which means identifying who that best talent is and working hard to retain them, and then also attracting top talent from other organizations, you can be a net winner through this great resignation that will occur over the next many months. And there will be net winners, parties that do neutral, and net losers through it. So strive to be a net winner, and one technique that I always love, David Ulrich, who's considered one of the number one professors in the world when it comes to HR practices and leadership practices. I've heard him say numerous times, at companies, we focus on exit interviews. What do we learn from exit interviews? I don't understand why more companies don't, with their top talent, do stay interviews. And what's it going to take to keep you? What's it going to take to keep you motivated? And I think just little tips like that can make a huge difference in winning through this next few months.
Wow, well said about the stay interviews. What a novel concept. Like, what's going well and how can we make it even better? How should leaders and HR professionals be thinking about talent, Josh, in the development when it comes to supporting millennials and the Generation Z?
It's another interesting question, Brenda. Often, and I'll admit my own bias here. Often, when I think about millennials and Generation Z, I think, yeah, that's really interesting, intriguing information, but that's really a worry for a few years down the road. So I don't need to totally focus on it right now. But I think it's good to level set because, time has passed since we started talking about these two generations. And literally now, millennials are roughly between the ages of 25 and 40. And Generation Z is 25 and younger. So both these generations now make up a significant portion of our workforce. And I would say the most mobile portion of our workforce when we talk about the great resignation and willingness to move across different companies and different jobs. So I think it's a very here and now thing that we all have to think about. Both of these generations are quite different when it comes to talent development than the boomers and Generation X are. So as boomers and Gen Xers, we're still very much willing to have the company come up with the development programs, partake in those programs as instructed, etc. Both the millennials and Gen Z don't have that mindset. Their mindset is very much of, I want to go after it. Give me a slate of options, but I'm going to go after those options with my own time, my own energy. I'm driven. I don't need to wait for something to come to me. I'm going to go get that new learning when I can. There are differences between the generations, though, too, those two generations. The millennials really like typically to do things in a team environment. So the more that our development programs can have a team component to them, that's something that will really resonate with the millennial generation. Gen Z, so those kind of 25 and younger, are more independent. They more want to go get the learning themselves when they're after it. And in fact, a really interesting thing about Gen Z that's showing up in the research is it's the first generation in decades, if not centuries, where they're really questioning the value of university education. And their view is, hey, I can self-educate or get certifications or whatever in a much faster manner and in a much more effective manner than potentially I can do through post-secondary. And not to ring the bells and say post-secondary education is dead. It's wonderful. It'll have a long life. I'm grateful for all of my training in that background, but it just says we've got a very different generation here who's much more focused on, I can make this happen for myself. So both generations have that in them. The millennials a bit more team oriented, Gen Z a bit more individual oriented, and Gen Z a little bit on steroids of the millennials in terms of, I need to be able to get this myself, as opposed to waiting for the company to come to them.
Wow. Isn't that interesting how in two different generations, there can be this shift from more community focused to, I want to do this on my own. That's super interesting. How important do you feel the role of technology is in future of talent development, Josh?
I think it's super important, and I'll just share some thoughts why. If you look at the four generations that are in the workplace now, from boomers through to Gen Z, The research would say for boomers, technology when it comes to development programs is a novelty. Interested in it, willing to try it, but it's kind of a novelty. For Gen X, it's somewhat expected. It's kind of normal, and I'd like to see a technology component. Maybe there's an e-learning aspect to the face-to-face training that we do. When you look at millennials and Gen Z, the best way to classify technology is they see it as air. So just like you need air to breathe, you need technology to do your work effectively, to advance effectively, to have a memory of what occurred and have that memory be living. Um, and interestingly, with Gen Z or Gen Z, if I was going to be more Canadian, um, they take it to a whole new level. They not only see technology as air, but when it comes to development programs or anything to do with technology, they expect that technology to be smart and personalized. So whereas the millennials expect the technology to be smart, um, Gen Z will take it one step further and say, I want it to also be personalized. So it needs to get me to the learning I specifically need or the information I'm specifically searching for sooner. And it needs to learn about who I am and get more effective over time at helping me get to what I need quicker as a result of knowing me better. So all that to say, I think it's to the point now where if we run some sort of development program the way we did for Xers and Boomers, it's going to land flat with these next two generations. And so I think we have to be very thoughtful about how do we build technology into everything we're doing, and learn from the different generations in terms of what are they looking for in our development programs.
It's so interesting to me. I have a millennial friend that I was chatting with about the big data, recording every move that you make online and then popping up ads that specifically are of interest. I was saying that I was concerned about that. And she was saying, you know what, I kind of like that. So to your point, it's very interesting that that is where they are. That's where they want it to be. They want technology to acknowledge them. At
Exactly.
oh,
Exactly.
sorry.
No,
Yes.
go ahead. I was just
Oh,
saying exactly. You nailed it. Yeah.
yeah, it's so cool actually to see the differences. Tell me, at Impro, you say you are democratizing one-on-one performance coaching. Can you give us a little more detail on how you're accomplishing this?
Yeah, what we did is we took a step back, and we're big believers in the power of executive coaching. And any senior leader who's had a one on one performance coach typically has highly valued that experience. But it hasn't been available to individuals, I would say, from the front line all the way up to middle management really forever, and for three principal reasons. One, just the cost. Good executive coaches earn their money and they can charge anywhere from $500 to $1,000 an hour. So a company's not going to pay for that across a broader subset of employees. Second challenge can be time. Sometimes if a senior leader starts thinking, even if they could afford executive coaching for a broader subset of their team, they would be thinking, do I really want dozens or hundreds of people spending an hour a week with a coach? Because added up, that's a big component of the company's time, and that can make a senior leader nervous. And then the final thing is just quality. Executive coaches are amazing and they work off gut feel and intuition, but there's only a subset that's yay big that can deliver that service well because it is a special skill. So if you wanted to start delivering that service en masse, finding people who can do it with a quality level and get results for people becomes very difficult. So we kind of looked at those three challenges and said, how can we develop a service leveraging everything we've talked about so far here today, that would bring something new to companies and employees, again, from the front line, whether they're a sales professional, an HR professional, a legal professional, you name it, all the way up to kind of middle management, so frontline managers and directors. And so just taking those three challenges in reverse order, the first one on quality, what our chief scientific officer did is he said a couple things. What if I could develop a methodology around performance coaching? So it's no longer gut feel and intuition that drive it, as works with executive coaching, but it's a methodology that we can train capable people who've had a good career already and understand industry, how to deliver this methodology. And then he said, let me take it a step further. What if I could build this as a micro change methodology? And a lot of research has been done into the adult brain, and it says that our adult brains really struggle to make big changes in how we think. Um, but our brains can change slowly but surely through a ton of micro changes. And that's not what we think. So it's easy for us to learn new information and get smarter that way, but it's how we think, how we make decisions, how we process information, how we see different points of view and bring those points of view into one, etc. And that's why you see organizations like Noom succeeding in the dieting world or Peloton succeeding in the exercise world, because it's all about small, tiny changes each and every day adding up over time. So he said, okay, I've got this methodology now. What if I can turn it into a micro set of changes? So rather than meeting with people once a week or once every 2 weeks, we interact with people every working day, but for 5 minutes or less. So it's such a low drain on their time. But because they're making tiny changes every day, it adds up over time. Now, he's been working on this for 20 years. So this is not some overnight sensation in terms of what we're doing at Impro. This is a lot of hard work, a lot of trial and error, but he got it there. He got it to the point where it works. And as long as an individual comes to us wanting to grow and being willing to accept help to grow, we can help them grow. In fact, our focus is on making them their own coach, and we're really guiding them on their self-coaching journey. On the second two aspects, time, I already talked about us being 5 minutes a day, but the way we do it is your first interaction with your coach would be in person over a video like this. So you build some trust with her or him. And then you're going to have every 6 weeks, you're still going to have a touch point with your coach to keep the eyeball to eyeball in it. But in between, you're going to be working with your coach over our app. You're not working with a bot, you're still working with your coach, and you're going back and forth. The beauty of that is it's now asynchronous. So you can answer your coach at morning, at night, on your lunch break. All this to say you're no longer trying to fit an hour into your calendar once a week, which can be difficult at the individual level. And as I said earlier, a bit overwhelming for a company at the company level. And then just two other thoughts. One is, on cost, we're, instead of $500 an hour or $1,000 an hour, we support people for 250 Canadian a month. So it's a totally different price point that a lot of organizations are super excited about. And then the last point, which people often find the most interesting, and this gets to what we've been talking about with the use of technology and using technology to get smarter, is because most of the interactions between the individual and their coach are over our app and over text, we're able to take all of that information and look at patterns. So for some that might be familiar, there's science called natural language processing. And so what we do is we just use natural language processing to see, are there patterns that we can map against brain research or neurological research? And in doing so, we can start to see things that you as an individual and even your Impro guide won't see, because machine learning is smarter in this regard, and it will identify things like biases that are holding us back or cognitive paradoxes that are holding us back. And there's a lot of complicated examples, but I'll give a very simple example just to bring it home. We might be able, after 3 months working with an individual, to come back and say, hey, Josh, we've noticed you're shy in meetings, and you constantly report you're shy in meetings. And you've said enough times it's because you feel that you'll embarrass yourself or look stupid if you ask a question. And the truth is quite the opposite. So this is just a bias that's been built into your brain. And maybe you had a parent that built it into your brain when you were 3 years old, or maybe you had a mean boss that built it into your brain 10 years ago. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, it's just a bias and it's holding you back. So let's conquer that bias and get over it. Because the truth is, if you open up in meetings and you ask questions, that's a gift. It's a gift to you because you gain more clarity that you need. It's a gift to the rest of the people in the room because they probably have that same question and they would enjoy the clarity too. And it's actually a gift to the presenter because she or he doesn't realize that they haven't given the right level of clarity for the room. And so you're enabling them to give the right level of clarity for the room. So in a nutshell, that's what we do, and it's so inspiring to see the results individuals are getting by having access to a one-on-one support that's never been possible before.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of affording people the opportunity to self-reflect on their own instead of being pinned to something in their schedule. There's so many insights can come just by having that time to sit and reflect. And
And that's
I've done the Noom. I actually joined up at one point with Noom, and so I really understand what you're saying in terms of spreading it out according to my own schedule.
Yeah, and to your point also, we're our belief is the best coach of any individual is actually themselves. So we are focused, like we tend to work with people for a year and then they'll move on. Some stay with us for longer than a year. But our whole goal is over a year to enable someone to be an amazing self coach and also to give them those skills to pass on those skills to the teams they lead in time. And so to your point, that self-reflection. So there's a lot of self-reflection and journaling in what we do because it enables people to be better and better self-coaches.
Yeah, wow. So intriguing. And I'm excited for the entire credit union organization to learn more about this. And they will reach out to you and obviously ask some additional questions. I know I have many, but once again, Josh, we are so grateful for your generosity, not only your sponsorship towards this conference, but also your expertise in doing something different and your research to prepare us for this cultural shift that is now upon us from a talent perspective. So thank you so much, Josh. Wish you well in your endeavors and can't wait to see how this unfolds for you at Impro.AI.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Good luck on your own journeys. As I said earlier, I know they're not easy journeys, but they're worthwhile journeys, especially given what we've been through. The importance of human resources, I think, has elevated by magnitudes. And if I can be of any help, I'm easy to get. I'm just josh.blair at impro.ai. So that's my email, josh.blair at impro.ai. So thank you,
Thank,
everyone, and take care.
thank you, Josh.